A month before the university entrance exam, I accidentally caught Ralph standing next to the campus beauty queen. His voice was deep and seductive, but every word he uttered was like a knife plunging straight into my heart. He said that no matter how hard I tried, he would never like me. The only reason he let me enter the competition this time was because he found my constant clinging annoying, so he wanted to find something to keep me busy. After that, I did as he wished and left them alone. Yet, he later came to me, holding the stained certificate of merit that he had dug out of the trash, and said he would grant me one wish. Under his expectant gaze, I spoke my wish, word by word. I want Ralph to permanently disappear from my life. No matter how hard Laura tries, I will never like her. No matter how much she tries, she only makes people feel annoyed. The words echoing from the room, each one like a sharp knife slicing past my ears, were so cold that they made me tremble. I stood frozen at the door of the abandoned equipment room, my whole body sinking into ice, feeling angry, hurt, and unable to believe I had been betrayed. The person speaking those words was Ralph, my childhood friend whom I grew up with, and the person he referred to as someone who only makes people feel annoyed no matter how much she tries, was me. Through the crack in the door, I saw Ralph lifting another girl's face. His eyes were gentle, yet captivated, as if looking at a priceless treasure. The scene was so beautiful and romantic that I was stunned. If not for that face and voice, I would absolutely not believe that the person lost in affection was the cold boy who had only focused on studying for over 10 years. In the 12 years we spent together, he had never given me such a gentle look. He even often said indifferently, "Laura, you're so stupid, it's annoying." Thinking of that, my heart twisted. I was about to turn and leave when Ralph's low voice echoed again from inside. I only let her participate in the city-level competition because I wanted her to have something else to do. Following us all the time is annoying. Weren't you upset that your scores weren't as good as hers? If she focuses all her energy on that city-level competition this time, she definitely won't get a high score in this month's mock exam. He spoke in a spoiling tone, but to my ears, it was nothing but sharp, icy coldness that pierced my heart. I looked down at the certificate in my hand, trembling, as if I had just climbed out of an ice pit. My entire body was freezing, and even my breath turned into white mist. 2 months ago, when the city-level competition registration board was announced, following my teacher's advice, I chose chemistry. But Ralph advised me to register for English too, which was my weak subject. I thought taking the exam would just waste time, but he said that if I won a certificate of merit in English, he would grant me a wish. Hearing him say that, my heart suddenly fluttered, thinking he had discovered the secret affection I had been hiding for so long. But thinking back now, his expression was just his usual cold indifference, as if the words I heard were merely an illusion. Thinking this, a feeling of vague loss welled up inside me. Finally, because of that promise, I ignored my teacher's dissuasion and firmly registered for the English subject. From that day on, I plunged into studying day and night, arriving at class the earliest and leaving the latest. Except for bathroom breaks, I barely left my seat, eating bread for quick meals when I was hungry. As a result, I no longer had time to study or eat with him as before, only meeting a couple of times a day. I felt a little discontented, but he advised, if you start something, you have to finish it. Don't give up halfway. And I actually believed him. When I finally held the certificate in my hand, I happily ran to find him, hoping he would fulfill his promise. But it turned out that the certificate I considered an honor was a humiliation in his eyes. I gave a bitter laugh and tossed it into the trash can. When I returned to the classroom, before I even settled down, Ralph and that girl walked in. The girl was named Susan, an art student who had transferred 3 months ago. She walked ahead, wearing a modified dress that looked like a uniform from a costume drama. The skirt high up on her chest, her hair braided into 2 small pigtails swinging on her shoulders. Every step she took was full of life and mischief. Susan studied classical dance and went to extra classes every afternoon. She was also the only person in the school who didn't have to wear a uniform or tie up her hair, sometimes even adding a layer of vibrant makeup. In the gloomy atmosphere where the whole school was buried in studying for every single point, her presence was like a dazzling, bright scene. Because of this, she was immediately dubbed the campus beauty on her first day. At this moment, my seatmate behind me gently poked my back, leaning in to whisper nosily, "Don't you think Ralph and Susan make a perfect couple?" I followed her gaze and saw Ralph, his hands in his pockets, walking casually behind Susan. But if you looked closely, you'd notice his eyes were constantly fixed on the person in front. Although they kept a certain distance, a subtle layer of ambiguity lingered in the air. My seatmate behind me sighed, saying that one was the cold school genius and the other was the radiant campus beauty. And if they got together, wouldn't it be the perfect school romance cliché? She was convinced that Ralph definitely had feelings for Susan, and she didn't forget to turn and ask me, "Laura, what do you think?" I lowered my eyes to look at the score sheet that had just been handed out. In my mind, the scene from the abandoned equipment room reappeared, the boy's captivated profile and the wet kiss lingering in the air. My fingers unconsciously curled, trembling slightly, and I replied, "Yeah, I think so too." Ralph only returned to his seat 2 minutes before the class started. He picked up the score sheet on his desk, glanced at it, and then looked at me. His hand lightly tapped the desk, a familiar gesture signaling he wanted to say something. Before, whenever this happened, I would smile brightly and run over to ask what was wrong. But this time, I didn't move. My eyes were intently glued to the line with my name. Laura, total score 566, class rank 12, grade rank 74. It was exactly as he had predicted. Because I had put too much effort into the English exam, my performance this month had plummeted disastrously, not only dropping out of the top 10 in the class, but also falling more than 50 places in the overall grade ranking. Looking at that number, I involuntarily recalled the past 3 years. The all-nighters spent studying, the draft papers full of formulas, and the hot milk my mother patiently brought me every evening. A wave of bitterness rose up. I felt I had failed myself and my family. Just for a secret, unrequited crush. Just for an empty promise. I had ruined all my efforts. Why did I have to trade it for this kind of result? My eyes were stinging. Tears flowed uncontrollably like a broken string of pearls, blurring the score sheet. In the afternoon, the classes were all about reviewing the exam papers, and my mood was heavy and gloomy. Ralph occasionally leaned over to say something, but I pretended not to hear. It wasn't until near the end of the last class that I took my cup to the water fountain, where I unexpectedly caught Ralph and Susan hiding there. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but just as I turned to leave, I heard my name. Susan asked petulantly, "Why haven't you told Laura about changing seats? Are you going soft because you saw her cry?" He chuckled softly and replied, "How could I? It's just that I feel a little sorry for her. After all, we grew up together, and our families have a good relationship." Hearing this, my whole body felt like it had been struck by lightning. So, in his eyes, I was just a pitiful person. But what was funnier was that all the suffering today wasn't created by him, was it? Just as my chest was tightening, Susan's voice rang out again, soft and sweet, making the listener feel an itch. "So you want to see me with someone else?" Ralph lowered his voice. "Don't mess around." Susan pouted. "I want to mess around. Are you going to tell her or not?" Ralph laughed and replied, Okay, I'll tell her tomorrow." Hearing this, a violent wave of nausea surged up, making my body tremble uncontrollably. I could only clutch the cup in my hand, squeezing so tightly that my fingertips turned white. Just then, a long, pale hand suddenly pulled the cup from my grip. I looked up and met the eyes of Otis, the school genius who had held the top position in the grade and the city for many years, often scoring dozens of points higher than the runner-up in every exam. I also heard that he had been directly recruited by a top national university as early as 11th grade and spent most of his time doing research there. Otherwise, Ralph wouldn't even be sitting at the top of the class. Yet today, he was at school. While I was still bewildered, Otis walked straight into the water room with the cup. Inside, the room immediately fell silent, and the atmosphere became awkward. A moment later, he walked out, holding a pink cup printed with Peppa Pig, with the words, "Call me Peppa," taped on it. The sight was so bizarre that I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His hands were called the God Hand in the lab, and university professors competed to invite him to assist with research. Yet now those hands were carefully filling a cup of water for me. A thought popped into my head: killing a chicken with a cow slaughtering knife. Seeing him walk out, I rushed to take the cup of water. We walked side by side on the way back to class. When we were not far from the classroom door, I heard him gently ask, "Do you want to switch seats?" I looked up and met Otis's eyes, clear, calm, and slightly questioning. I pursed my lips, thinking that there were no empty seats, and with less than a month until the university entrance exam, no one would want to change seatmates right now. Seeing me lower my head in silence, Otis didn't say anything more, just waited until I entered the classroom before leaving. During the last class, I still didn't speak a word to Ralph. At this moment, just hearing him breathe made me feel disgusted. As soon as the dismissal bell rang, he quickly turned to me and said, "Laura, I have something to do tonight. I won't be eating dinner with you." My movement of reaching for my lunchbox paused. Before I could reply, I saw him stand up and walk out. In the hallway, Susan was waiting. When she met my eyes, she smiled radiantly. Her gaze has a naked provocation. I immediately looked away, hugging my lunchbox toward the cafeteria. I didn't want to eat with Ralph anyway. After eating, I returned to class and buried myself in copying the incorrect problems. Not long after, a classmate told me the homeroom teacher was looking for me. I thought the teacher wanted to ask about my failing grades, but the first thing the teacher said when I walked into the office was, "I heard you want to change seats?" I was stunned. The teacher continued, "Otis's seat is still empty. Move your things there." A desk was always kept for him in the classroom, the first desk by the window. Since Otis didn't like people touching his belongings, no one dared to sit there all this time. I hesitated and asked, "But did he agree?" The teacher waved his hand and smiled.
"He was the one who personally suggested that you sit there. Don't worry. Moreover, he asked me to tell you that if you're sitting in the school genius's spot, you need to study hard."
A warmth surged within me. After that, the teacher reminded me not to get distracted and to focus on the upcoming exam. I nodded repeatedly. The first thing I did after leaving the office was move my belongings to the new desk. A friend curiously asked, and I vaguely explained that I didn't do well on the exam this time, and the teacher wanted me to sit alone to concentrate better. Hearing this, no one asked further. I went back to burying my head in my books. Ralph returned close to the start of the evening self-study session. Seeing the seat next to him empty, his expression instantly froze. He immediately scanned the classroom and quickly spotted me sitting by the window. His face darkened. He walked over. His voice was not small, so the whole class could hear.
"Why did you change seats?"
I used the same explanation as before, but he clearly didn't believe it. Standing right in front of my desk, he looked down, his gaze growing deeper. Seeing him stand there like a statue, I stopped writing and asked indifferently, "What? Do you want me to move back? Then I'll go." With that, I tried to stand up to gather my things, but he placed his hand on the stack of books to stop me. After a long pause, I heard him grind out, "No need. Sitting alone is convenient for studying." I gave a faint sneer. He was truly a hypocrite, pretending to be reluctant while plotting to abandon me in his heart. It was truly disgusting. The next day, as expected, Susan sat in the seat next to him. I saw them accidentally touch hands and both blush, saw them smile when the teacher misspoke, and saw him gently cover her with his jacket when she fell asleep. When she woke up, she frowned and complained that the jacket was ugly. So from then on, his desk drawer held a small pink blanket. As for me, I gradually stopped paying attention to the sight because my world was now focused only on studying. Just as Otis had said, if I was sitting in the school geniuses spot, I had to achieve worthy results. I returned to my previous routine, starting to study from the moment I woke up and stopping only when I fell asleep, even reciting knowledge while walking and eating. After our encounter at the water room that day, I opened WeChat in the evening and saw a friend request from Otis. He messaged, "If you have any academic questions you don't understand, just ask me. Don't let me lose the school genius title." I laughed and immediately sent him a few difficult problems I couldn't solve. Sure enough, a genius is a genius. His solution was much simpler than the teacher's. Clear thinking, neat calculations, reducing errors, and saving time. After being guided by Otis for a while, I felt like everything cleared up like the moon after the clouds when doing those problem types. In the most recent weekly exam, I was the only one in the class who solved the final math problem, and my solution was many steps shorter than the model answer. When the papers were returned, the teacher praised me right in front of everyone. The teacher asked me how I thought of that solution. I was a little embarrassed and replied that Otis had explained a similar problem to me before, using that exact method. The whole class laughed, and the teacher chuckled, joking, "Even the grade head can't easily contact Otis. I didn't expect him to take the time to help you with your work." The teacher's words were unintentional, but to others, they were not simple at all. As soon as the sentence ended, I immediately felt a cold, sharp gaze fixed on me. Turning my head, I met Ralph's gloomy, angry eyes. I quickly looked away, pretending not to notice. A little later, when the teacher began reviewing the final math problem, he said he would only explain the standard answer, and that anyone who wanted to learn my method should ask me after class. Sure enough, after class, quite a few friends came to borrow my paper. Ralph also pushed his way over, but not to ask about the problems, but to stare at me angrily. His voice was icy cold. "Why didn't you ask me if you didn't understand a problem?" In the past, to have an excuse to talk to him, I had often brought him problems to ask. Most of the time, he would just look impatient, flip through the textbook, point to a formula, and leave me to figure it out myself. I slightly raised an eyebrow, curled my lips, and said, "Because someone explained it to me thoroughly and clearly, much better than just throwing a formula at me to look up." Ralph's face instantly darkened, and a flame of anger flared in his eyes. I didn't want to pay attention. Seeing there were still a few minutes before the next class, I stood up and walked out. Unexpectedly, he followed. Near the stairs, he suddenly pulled my wrist forcefully, dragging me into a corner and pinning me against the wall. I looked up reluctantly, facing his restless, suspicious eyes, as if I had done something he couldn't possibly understand. I stayed silent. He immediately spoke. "You've been completely different since the monthly exam scores were announced. I haven't seen you going to or from school, and you're avoiding me during meals. It was just one bad exam. Why are you so angry?" I laughed coldly and said, "Why don't you just say it? Why did I do badly on the exam?" A hint of guilt flashed in his eyes, and he quickly avoided my gaze. I tilted my head, smiling faintly. "Because you found me annoying, you deliberately told me to take the English exam so I wouldn't have time to cling to you. Because Susan was jealous of my scores, you deliberately distracted me so my rank would drop to please her. Killing two birds with one stone. Clever move, Ralph." My voice grew colder. "But did you ever consider how failing the last monthly exam before the university entrance exam would affect me? Or did you want to see me not only drop in rank, but also fail the university entrance exam entirely? If you hated me, why didn't you just say so? Why play dirty tricks behind my back? I don't need your pity either. What right do you have?" Ralph's face became increasingly unpleasant. Blue veins bulged on the back of the hand that was braced against the wall. His breathing was heavy and hoarse. He growled softly. That's not true. Laura, I never thought that. I glanced at him, offering a sarcastic smile. But you did exactly that. You did it, and now you don't dare to admit it? Faced with my sharp questioning, his expression twisted. His eyes were full of confusion and fear. He only repeated the 3 words. That's not true. I fiercely pushed his hand away and turned to leave coldly. As I was about to step out of the hallway, his hoarse voice came from behind me. Laura, where is that English certificate? I paused for a beat, then replied with a faint laugh. I threw that useless thing away a long time ago. Not just that certificate, but also my 12 years of affection for you. I met Ralph when I was 4 years old. We attended the same kindergarten and then discovered that my father and his father were colleagues, with our houses facing each other. We gradually became close. My mother and his mother became best friends, and I ran after him every day. When I was little, I only saw him as the most handsome person and wanted to play with him all the time. Once, I insisted on staying at his house and refused to go home, demanding to be his sister. The 2 mothers laughed and said that if I couldn't be his sister, I could be his wife. Hearing that, I eagerly declared myself Ralph's little wife. Every time the neighbors called me that, I puffed out my chest and proudly replied. Later, as I got a little older, I understood what being a wife meant, and from then on, I didn't dare to speak carelessly. But the innocent feelings of a young girl silently began to sprout. Ralph was 1 year older than me. Because I cried and refused to be separated that year, my parents compromised and let me attend the same elementary school as him. The 2 mothers again asked the teacher, so from 1st grade, I became Ralph's seatmate. However, the older we got, the wider the gap between Ralph and me grew. He was the school genius, acknowledged by both teachers and students. A math problem would be solved with just a glance from him, while I had to bury my head in it for a long time and still might not get the right answer. To keep up with him, I had to put in 3 or 4 times the effort of others. Yet, he never liked me. For his birthday, I spent a whole month making a handcrafted gift, which he gave to someone else the next day. When he was hospitalized, I copied all my notes for him, which he didn't even look at before throwing them in the trash. When his parents went on a business trip, I cooked and brought him 3 meals a day, but he wouldn't even let me step inside the door. At the time, I foolishly thought he was just cold and socially awkward and never thought of giving up. But now I understood. It was because, in his eyes, I was not worthy. Not worthy of a gentle look from him. Not worthy of him spending a moment of thought. And certainly not worthy of him being moved. I had said such harsh words, thinking that with Ralph's personality, he would definitely not bother me again. But to my surprise, the next morning, as soon as I walked out of the house, I saw his figure standing at the end of the hallway. Unlike his usual calm and cold demeanor, he looked a little tired today, with dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept all night. I raised an eyebrow and walked past him expressionlessly. Seeing me, his eyes lit up, and he quickly followed, handing me a bag of breakfast and saying, "This is soy milk my mom made last night. Take it to drink with you." I stopped and asked coldly, "What do you mean?" The hand holding the bag tightened, and his voice became gentle. "You've been busy studying lately, so you probably don't have time for breakfast. The food from outside isn't clean. Didn't you like my mom's cooking? Let me bring it to you from now on, okay?" Facing his earnest gaze, I just smiled faintly and replied, "No need. Keep it and eat it yourself." I remembered clearly that when I was struggling to prepare for the English exam, which was even harder than now, I had suggested he help me with breakfast. But back then he had said, "Time is something you manage yourself. If you feel like you don't have enough, it means you're bad at managing it. Don't always think about bothering others." Now, hearing my rejection, he paused,
momentarily stunned, probably recalling his own cold and heartless attitude back then. His voice turned hoarse, laced with regret and sorrow. Is it possible that just because of this, you're throwing away all the years of feeling between us? This time, I was wrong. I apologize, Laura. Can you forgive me? I looked straight at him. My voice was cold and unwavering. Ralph, I am not obligated to forgive you, and I don't want to. Stop putting on this look of regret. Ask yourself what you've ever done for me over the past decade. What I like, what I hate, or what birthday gifts you've ever given me? Never. You simply can't stand losing someone who shamelessly clung to you, treated you like a belief, and was good to you. He yelled, his voice strained and hoarse, his face pale. His whole body resembled a trapped animal, desperate, uneasy, and frantic. That's not true! But I wasn't in the mood to watch his performance, so I simply turned and walked away. In the following days, he acted obsessively, constantly hovering around me. When I went to class in the morning, left school in the afternoon, or even went to the restroom or got water, he followed close behind, his presence near and far making me extremely uncomfortable. What annoyed me even more was that ever since the day he brought breakfast, a gift would suddenly appear in my desk drawer every day. It started with small dolls, then bracelets, necklaces, and hair clips, growing more expensive and more mature in style, seemingly following a certain sequence. I pretended not to see them, letting them collect dust. But even though I didn't look for trouble, trouble found me. 3 days before the university entrance exam, during the long break, Susan blocked me at the water room door. Her expression was cold, and her voice was sharp. Ralph said he will be with me after the exam. I simply uttered a flat, trying to walk past, but she moved to block my way. I frowned and asked, "What do you want?" Susan scoffed. "I know you like him, and now you want to take advantage of his guilt to lure him back. But I advise you not to waste your effort. The only person he likes is me." Hearing her repeat the word "like" again and again, my patience was nearly depleted. I reached out and pushed her aside, intending to leave, but I hadn't taken more than a few steps before I saw Ralph standing around the corner, having apparently eavesdropped for some time. Seeing me, a flicker of joy flashed in Ralph's eyes, as if he was about to say something, but Susan rushed out from behind me and threw herself into his arms. I had no interest in watching the scene of the two lovers and quickly returned to class. Since the school gave 2 days off before the university entrance exam to prepare at home, today was technically our last day at school. After class, the whole class felt liberated and began dealing with the piles of books on their desks. Some tore up papers to make planes, some gathered them to sell for scrap, and others chose to keep them as souvenirs. I only took a few important notebooks, abandoned the rest, and left with my backpack. Over the next 2 days, I stayed confined to my room, studying day and night. On the night before the exam, I unexpectedly received a call from Otis. He asked if I was nervous. I smiled softly and replied, "I was a little worried before I heard your voice, but not anymore." Perhaps thanks to his guidance all this time, my performance had improved significantly, and my foundation was much firmer. Just hearing his voice immediately calmed my heart, and all my worries subsided. No wonder people in ancient times, when they were about to have a breakdown while cultivating, often needed a master to calm their minds. I told Otis this thought, and he laughed uncontrollably on the other end of the phone. Finally, he softened his voice. "Just do your best. Don't be afraid." I hung up, tidied the materials on my desk, sat by the window for a while, and prepared for sleep. My phone lit up again. This time, it was a message from Ralph. "I'm outside your house. Come out for a moment." I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another text came. "If you don't come out, I'll knock and ask your aunt to open the door." I considered it for a moment, put on a jacket, and stepped out. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Ralph standing there, hugging a large bag, which contained all the gifts I hadn't taken.
Catching my gaze lingering on the pile of boxes, his expression looked wronged. He said, "You once said I never gave you a birthday present. This is the accumulated gifts from over 10 years. I'm making it up to you. Why won't you accept them?" I asked coldly, "Did you only come to see me to talk about this?" Seeing I was about to close the door, he panicked, quickly put the bag down, and pulled a piece of paper from his chest, opening it in front of me. It was the English exam certificate of merit that I had thrown away. He said that after I discarded it, the janitor picked it up, thought someone had lost it, and handed it to the homeroom teacher. The teacher only remembered it today while tidying up, and he had volunteered to bring it over. Now, he held the certificate, his eyes fixed on me, speaking slowly, word by word. "Laura, back then I said you could use it to exchange for a wish. The certificate is here now. What do you wish for?" In the face of that sight, I only found it amusing. I said, "I want you to stay away from me." Hearing this, he stared, seemingly unable to believe it, trying to force a smile but failing, which only made his face stiff and unnatural. He struggled to say, "Don't joke around, Laura." I cut him off. "I'm not joking." Then I looked up, suddenly remembering something, and asked, "Did you always know I liked you?" His face instantly turned pale, and his lips moved as if to explain. At this point, what was there left for me not to understand? Involuntarily, all the infatuation, the anticipation, the hope, he would discover my feelings, but the fear he would. It all turned into a joke. I looked at him. My voice was bitter. "You clearly knew I liked you, and you didn't like me, yet you still made promises. I'm genuinely curious what you would have done if I had actually brought the certificate and wished to be with you. Would you have fobbed me off with a flimsy excuse, endured being with me, or simply stated it was just a joke?" In that moment, I found the person in front of me utterly despicable. How sickening must it be to treat someone's genuine sincerity toward you as a game? Hearing those words, his eyes reddened, glistening with unspoken, shattered tears. He watched me, his face showing a fleeting mix of resentment and despair. His voice, which had always been proud and aloof, was now hoarse. "Laura, I was wrong. Can you forgive me? I've thought a lot these past 2 days. I realize that I like you." Seeing my disbelief, he gave a bitter laugh. His voice choked. "I didn't believe it before either. I always thought I should hate you because you always smiled. No matter how I treated you, you always followed me relentlessly. So I always wanted to treat you a little worse so you wouldn't come near me anymore. Maybe I look like a lunatic in your eyes, but in the end, I found out I like you. I truly hope you can make a new wish, that we will be together. I promise I will treat you very well." Ralph's voice was trembling, like a child who had made a mistake, his eyes stubbornly demanding an answer. I only replied with the cold, decisive sound of the door closing. The university entrance exam passed quickly. Right after the exam, I immediately booked a tour to relax. For a month, I traveled with a group through Xinjiang, seeing magnificent mountains, vast glaciers, endless grasslands, and beautiful farmlands. The night before the results were announced, I returned home and tossed and turned all night. The next morning, my mother woke me up to check the scores. In truth, as soon as I walked out of the exam room, I had estimated my own results. It was my best performance in 3 years of high school. Sure enough, when the website loaded, the total score displayed 692. My parents were overjoyed, and I quietly picked up my phone and sent a text to Otis. We had kept in touch after the exam. During the trip, I sent him quite a few photos of the scenery and food. He replied almost immediately. Excellent, a result that was always expected. I smiled, pressing my lips together. Just as I was feeling happy, my mother suddenly sighed. It's a pity. I was confused. My mother gently shook her head and said, "I'm not regretting anything for you. It's for Ralph. I heard that before the final exam, he was beaten and his leg was broken, forcing him to miss one subject." I was startled, completely unaware of this incident. I heard it was caused by friends of his seatmate, some social hoodlums. They accused him of deceiving a girl's feelings. My mother muttered that she had always thought that since our families knew each other, it would be a happy ending if he and I ended up together. But she didn't expect the truth to be this way. What a shame. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so I silently kept all the past events to myself. When the exam results were announced, I received my admission notice. The whole family only went out for a big meal and didn't hold a party. In the class group chat, some were happy, others sad, and some people mentioned Ralph. I heard that even though he missed one subject, his total score still reached 572. But unfortunately, the top scholar seed suddenly became withered. Susan also didn't have a good outcome. After the incident, the police found out that she was the one who instigated the hoodlums, and she was also accused of cheating in the art exam and bribing teachers. In the end, her scores were canceled, and she had to retake the exams for 3 years. Her future completely ruined. Ralph didn't choose to retake the exams. He found out which university I applied to and registered at a second-tier school nearby. The score difference was too large. He couldn't attend the same university, so he could only pursue me from the outside. The tables had turned. Now he was the one desperately chasing me. I lived my university days in a whirlwind rhythm of clubs, student union, classes, and the library. I had very little free time. Only in university did I realize that the friends around me had changed a lot. Boys and girls all knew how to take care of their appearance and make themselves shine. It was then that I understood how ridiculous and empty the campus beauty title Susan once held actually was. In my 3rd year, Otis and I got together. By then, he had completed his master's degree, was continuing his PhD research, and also became a lecturer at our university, coincidentally teaching my class. Seeing him stand authoritatively on the podium, but returning to his usual playful self in the dorm, often made me so annoyed that I wanted to punch him. Later, I once asked him why he agreed to help me back then. He gently hugged me from behind, resting his head in the crook of my neck, his voice low and warm. When I was a freshman, a teacher once handed out a practice test and said the last question might be wrong. No one in the class bothered to try it, but you sat there diligently, filling 2 draft papers, and calculated the answer. At that moment, I immediately thought that you would definitely do well in your studies later. Hearing him recount it, memories flooded back. At the time, Ralph said I didn't know my own limits and wasted my effort. I had almost burst into tears. But now, I understood that my efforts were seen by someone and treasured by someone. In my graduation year, I brought Otis home to meet my parents. They were both extremely pleased with him. After dinner, I went downstairs to take out the trash, and suddenly, I saw a limping figure approaching in the distance. It was Ralph. I smiled, nodded a greeting, and turned to leave. Behind me, he suddenly asked, "Is there still a chance for us?" I just smiled faintly and raised my hand for him to see the ring on my ring finger. In life, the luckiest thing is knowing when to stop. And even luckier is finding someone who truly loves you. If you can't find that person, you must first learn to love yourself.